Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Ani Palmo Ribicki, and I am the director and resident teacher of Songtsen Gampo Buddhist Center in Cleveland, Ohio. Every month, we have these videos where I give a brief Dharma talk followed by guided meditation. So happy to see you here this morning. If you want to review all these videos that I've done in the past are available on our channel. All right, so before we begin, let's just settle into our seats and breathe. Bring the mind into the present moment, here and now. We want to generate our bodhicitta motivation, which is, how we try to begin everything Dharma in relation to the Dharma for sure, but actually any positive thing that we do, we can do with the bodhicitta motivation. So bodhicitta means awakened mind heart. And that's the, literal definition of the word, but it signifies the wish to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. So everything that we do on this path is with that goal in mind. Okay, so please, if enlightenment or you're not Buddhist or whatever, that's fine. You don't have to think that, but at least form the motivation that the time we spent together this morning will benefit others and not only yourself. Okay. And then we turn our minds towards our precious teachers. In our case, we have the extraordinary good fortune to have Jigme Khyentse Rinpoche, Tuku Pema Wangel Rinpoche, and Taku Mato Rinpoche as our spiritual guides. So when we think of any kind of spiritual master like the Dalai Lama or the Karmapa or our own teachers or Songtsen Khyentse Rinpoche, it's always with the idea that these are not ordinary beings and that they have taken and kept their Bodhisattva vow, which we will talk about later, and to return to cyclic existence in order to benefit all beings, including ourselves. So as they are the very embodiment of wisdom and compassion, we ask for their blessings with humility and respect. And, we're asking for their blessings is a little bit of a strange word. It's not exactly the meaning in Tibetan, but essentially we're asking them to help us out with the understanding that, there's a lot of obstacles to practicing, to learning. And we want to traverse this path properly and attain enlightenment as quickly as possible in order to help others. So, and again, if that doesn't make sense to you, that's perfectly fine. All right. All right. So as the title says, what are and the Bodhisattva vow. So typically, we take these vows when we become a Buddhist, when we decide to become a Buddhist, when we decide, this is the path we really want to follow. We're going to commit to this path, so we take refuge. And then after taking refuge, we can take the Bodhisattva vow at the same time, or we can take it later according to our own feelings. Okay, so let's talk about refuge. Okay, so as refuge is the first thing. So I want to talk first, so you're not distracted by that, of the ceremony, which I think I forgot to mention in my notes here. So the refuge ceremony is typically quite brief, at least in my experience. So it's essentially the Lama, talks to you for a bit about what is refuge, what are the benefits, what are the commitments when we take refuge, and so forth. And then just has you repeat 3 lines 3 times. I take refuge in the Buddha, I take refuge in the Dharma, I take refuge in the Sangha. And then they snap their fingers, and at that moment, you have received refuge, okay? In order to do any of the higher practices, we really at least need to have refuge and the Bodhisattva vow, okay? All right, so we talk about refuge. So we have to think about what is the meaning of the word refuge. What do we think of when we think about refuge, right? Well, when we take refuge, as Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche says, we become a refugee, right? So this word maybe we're more familiar with, yeah? We talk about, refugees leaving, war-torn countries. Well, so they're taking refuge, right? They're taking refuge in another country. They're escaping usually some kind of horror, actually. At least great difficulty in their own country, in their home country. Otherwise, they would stay there, happily there, living their lives as usual, right? But when we as Buddhists say taking refuge, well, what are we taking refuge from, and what are we taking refuge in, right? So in the example I just gave, the refugees who leave a country to go to another country are taking refuge from the incredible amount of suffering that they're going through in their own country, and they're taking refuge in whatever country they have gone to, okay? So in our case, what we're taking refuge from, conflicting emotions and habitual patterns that have imprisoned us in suffering since beginningless time, okay? So what do I mean by conflicting emotions? So conflicting emotions are essentially what we would consider negative emotions, right? So hatred, anger, pride, jealousy, greed, all the good stuff, okay? So, and habitual patterns are just kind of the sort of unconscious habits that we have developed over time, okay? Like the habit of being angry or jealousy or stealing or killing or these kind of things, okay? So it's these negative or unskillful acts of body, speech, and mind that cause us to create negative karma, okay, which then perpetuates this whole cycle. So when we talk about cyclic existence, it's birth, living, death, reborn in another state, and going through that over and over and over again, okay? And each one of these lives that we have contains actually a great deal of suffering, okay? So that's what we're taking refuge from. So we're saying, I don't want to stay in this mess anymore. I don't want to, continue this vicious cycle that makes me suffer and causes me to, make others suffer too with my negative acts, okay? So I want to get out of this. So what are we taking refuge in, okay? So it's like I said earlier, we're taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, okay? So the Buddha, everybody knows the Buddha, right? It's not actually like Buddha Shakyamuni or some other kind of Buddha, okay? It really is, the Buddha represents like an example of our own enlightened nature, okay? Also, of course, the teacher and the historical Buddha and what have you, but actually that's not the main point. The main point is our true nature, taking refuge in our wisdom, our basic goodness, instead of taking refuge in our negative habits and so forth, okay, or in something else, which I'll talk about in a minute, okay, then what the Dharma means is we're taking refuge in the teachings, in the wisdom of the teaching. So, for example, I'm just going to use anger as an example here because it's what I'm most familiar with as a practitioner, okay? And I think it's something everybody understands with ease. So that's the example I'm going to be using, but you can apply it to anything, all right? So to take refuge in the teachings, it doesn't mean like, oh, you hold up a book of the Dharma book and place it on your head and walk around your house with incense and folded hands. It's not about that, okay? It's about relying on the teachings, taking refuge, to guide us, to guide our life. So let's say that we have a pretty strong habit of anger, right? To take refuge in the teachings, in that case, means to study the teachings, right? What are the disadvantages of anger? How to let go of anger? This kind of thing, right? Shantideva, for example, in his book, The Way of the Bodhisattva, chapter 6 is on patience. And it's so good and it's so, so helpful for creating a habit of patience rather than continuing to indulge our old habit of anger, okay? Then the Sangha, taking refuge in the Sangha. So there's a few meanings actually of the word Sangha, but our teachers have stressed in the last few years that really when we talk about taking refuge in the Sangha, we're talking about taking refuge in great beings like really advanced practitioners, bodhisattvas, this kind of thing, okay? As an example, as, someone that we can see like, oh, this path actually works, okay? And then there's sort of Sangha used as, maybe we can say small s Sangha and capital S Sangha, okay? So small s Sangha is your spiritual companions, so the people that you're on the path with. In them, according to our teachers, but we can gain a lot of benefit from our fellow practitioners, okay? So if, let's say we're completely new to the Dharma and there's people who, are fellow practitioners who have been practicing for a long time, right? And I've done this more times than I can count. We can go to them and just say, hey, here's the problem I'm having. Have you found a solution to this problem? If so, what was it? Or, our teacher said X, Y, Z. I don't really understand it. Do you understand it? Right. And they can help us progress. And then we can do the same for, community members who are newer than us. Okay. So another way that the Sangha really helps us might not seem like help, but it really is. Okay. So before I explain this, we have to understand that we don't get to choose. We don't get to choose who our fellow practitioners are, right? Just like a family. Okay. However, we have a commitment to them. It's called Samaya, a sort of sacred bond. We have Samaya with our teachers, and we have Samaya with our fellow practitioners. They use the word, Vajra, brothers and sisters. I really don't like using it because it sounds like culty to me, but maybe it doesn't sound like that to you. I don't know. I always hesitate because it does sound a little bit weird to me. Sorry, I'm just turning off my Bluetooth. There we go. So having said that, right, we have the Samaya. We don't want to break the Samaya. So our commitment in that case is to see our fellow practitioners as to see them with like pure view, to do our best not to harm them in any way, not to disrespect them. Okay, so that can be really hard because not everybody, as I've said so many times, just because you decide to follow the Buddhist path doesn't mean you're enlightened. You're just deciding to try to become enlightened on this particular path. So it would be great if the moment we took refuge, the next second we were enlightened and we didn't have any of our habits and so forth. Okay. So how does other people being, let's say, unkind to us help us? Well, it helps us to develop patience. You know, as Shantideva says, if everyone was kind to us, we wouldn't, wouldn't have an opportunity to develop patience. Okay. So that's a kind of another subject about how our so-called enemy is also our teacher. So I don't want to go too much in that. Okay. So there are typically three types of motivations for taking refuge. Okay. There's lesser, middling, and that of great beings. So they often divide things like this. Yeah. Good, better, best, essentially. So the lesser motivation for taking refuge is to be born in the higher realms and having fear of the lower realms. So I'm pretty sure I talked about this in one of the videos, but maybe not. So this is cyclic existence in its most crude, basic explanation is that 6 realms from high to low, and the highest realm, there's very little suffering for most of the time that you spend there, but the end is really difficult. And the lowest realm, there's an incredible amount of unending suffering. So, unending while you're there, I guess. You don't really get any breaks from it, but eventually you purify that negative karma and you're reborn somewhere else. So that's what it means. It's just people who want to be reborn in these higher realms, and they don't want to be reborn in the lower realms, so they take refuge. The middle motivation is the wish to achieve nirvana. So that might seem like, wait a minute, isn't that enlightenment? No, it's not enlightenment. According to the Vajrayana, okay? In nirvana, it's really just kind of getting to the point where you can just hang out in bliss all the time. So great, nice, but doesn't really have the bodhicitta motivation, the bodhicitta drive, attain full enlightenment. So it's definitely an advanced, no question, but it's not full enlightenment. So that's why it's considered middling. Then there's the motivation of the great being. So I have a quote here. I'm sorry, I don't remember where I got this quote from. I couldn't find it. So anyway, I'll just read you the quote. The sight of all beings, so we take refuge because, quote, the sight of all beings plunged in the great ocean of samsara's, which is cyclic existence, of samsara's infinite suffering and undergoing an unimaginable variety of torments, motivates us to take refuge with the idea of establishing them all in the unsurpassable and omniscient state of perfect and complete Buddhahood. Okay, so essentially taking refuge with the bodhicitta motivation because we cannot stand the suffering of others, and we really want to attain enlightenment so that they can be free. Okay, now there are precepts that come with taking refuge. There are 3 things to be abandoned, 3 things to be done, and 3 supplementary precepts. Okay, so the 3 things to be abandoned. When we take refuge in the Buddha, we are not to take refuge in worldly gods. Okay, so this language refers to kind of animistic societies like Tibet was, for example, before the advent of Buddhism there. So for example, they believed in like tree spirits and water spirits and things like that, and they would take refuge in them. So it's saying, don't do that. Once you take refuge in the Buddha, you're taking refuge in the Buddha and not something else. So in our case, it's anything else that we take refuge in that we don't really think about as refuge. Okay, so maybe we're not feeling good, so we take refuge in watching TV. Okay, something that where we want to escape suffering and into a feeling of safety, though it's not really safety. Okay. Or we take refuge in drinking, or we take refuge in, just zoning out and playing video games. Okay. This is to be avoided. Not that we can't ever do those things. Okay. Nobody's saying that, but it's kind of like if we have any kind of issue that is causing us suffering, it's much better to take refuge in the Buddha. So an example is, understanding we have this Buddha nature and so forth. Okay. So what we should abandon when we take refuge in the Dharma is we are not to harm others, even in dreams, and we should make a vigorous effort to protect others. Okay. So even in dreams, in our culture, we think like, well, I couldn't help that, so of course I'm not going to feel bad about that. And not really that we should feel bad. It's just an understanding that, like, if we're harming others in our dreams, that means that we still have the, seed, let's say, of harming others in our mind. It still exists there because dreams don't come from anywhere but our mind. Okay, that's why we have to be careful. So as we, I suppose, do not have the ability to control our dreams. Okay. Then if we wake up and we realize, like, oh man, I just had a dream that I killed someone, then we say the Bodhisattva mantra and try to purify that. And you can learn more about that in a video I made recently, I think, called Fixing Our Mistakes. Okay. So when we take refuge in the Sangha, it says, do not get involved with those who denigrate the teachings or the teacher. All right. So it doesn't mean that we can only hang out with other Buddhists. All right. But it does mean that we should avoid hanging out with somebody who, hates Buddhism and just wants to criticize our teacher. And the reason that it says, really you should avoid them, it's just because, especially as beginners, and like I've been doing this for, over 30 years, and I still consider myself a beginner. So, mind is a little bit wishy-washy. It can be in the beginnings, especially kind of fragile in a sense, and if we have someone who's close to us who's constantly doing that, it can really inject doubt in a negative way. It's not like we're supposed to have blind faith. Okay, this is not a teaching at all in Buddhism. We're supposed to have some amount of skepticism, I guess, where we should test the teaching. So that's different than just feeling like, oh, all of this is BS. Okay. So then when we take refuge, there's 3 things to be done. When we take refuge in the Buddha, we should honor or respect anything representing him. So even like a statue, like even a piece of a statue. Okay. And it's not like, oh, we're honoring the clay or whatever. It's not that. It's just, it's a sacred image. So we should respect that. So what that means is, let's say that we have an intact Buddha statue. We don't put it in the bathroom. We don't put it on the floor, this kind of thing. All right. Okay. So when we take refuge in the Dharma, we're supposed to respect any text or even a piece of the text. And that's because it represents the words of the Buddha. It represents the Dharma. Okay. So what that means is that typically this just refers to Dharma books. So when we have Dharma books, we don't put them on the floor. We don't hold them under our arm. We don't, of course, have them at the same level as our butt. Like if we're sitting on the couch or something, we don't put the Dharma book on the couch cushion next to us. We don't place other things on top of it except another Dharma book. So a lot of times I see in my classes when we are meeting in person, people take off their glasses and put it on top of the book or their phone or a pen or something like that. And it's not like, that's not going to send anybody to hell. Okay. It doesn't mean you're a bad person, but it's almost like a mindfulness practice where book, I'm not going to walk over it, etc., and abide by these guidelines. Yeah. And then when we have Dharma books at home, we put them in the highest spot. So your Dharma books go on the top shelf. Okay. And then your other non-Dharma books go underneath that. And then when we take refuge in the Sangha, we respect anything that symbolizes it. So any red or yellow cloth jewel of the Sangha. So what does that mean? So that brings us to another definition of Sangha, which some people use, which is the ordained people. Okay. So ordained people typically wear red and yellow. Okay. It's okay to wear red and red, just in case you think I'm breaking a rule. Okay. So that's what that's referring to. Then there's the, 3 supplementary precepts, but I only have 2 written down here, so we'll have to do it that. To see the teacher, so meaning Lama, right? Rinpoche is not a teacher like me. See the teacher's body, speech, and mind as the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. That's a supplementary precept. And see your Vajra siblings as the jewel of the Sangha. Okay. Okay. In general, as far as precepts are concerned, once we take refuge, whenever we encounter difficulties, we rely on the 3 jewels. So as I was saying earlier, not to take refuge in other things. Yeah. So when someone insults us, we don't take refuge in our habit of responding with anger. We take refuge in the Sangha. Okay. When we feel maybe hopeless, we take refuge in the Buddha, hey, here's somebody who attained enlightenment, and I have the same, nature as the Buddha. I have Buddha nature, I have enlightened nature, I can do it, okay, etc. All right. So now, so the benefits, excuse me, I need to drink. Hold on one second. Okay. So the benefits of taking refuge are, they plant the seed of liberation in yourself, meaning once you've taken refuge, that's the seed of enlightenment, essentially. Yeah. So liberation from cyclic existence or samsara. It distances yourself from negative acts and helps you to do more positive acts. All right, as I've really explained already. It is the support for all vows and the source of all good qualities. So, for example, if you wanted to ordain, you couldn't do that without taking refuge. Or if you wanted to take the Bodhisattva vow, you can't do that without taking refuge. You have to take refuge first. And ultimately, it leads to the state of Buddhahood. Okay. In a sutra called the Immaculate, it says, if all the merit of taking refuge were to take physical form, the whole of space, entirely filled, would not be enough to contain it. All right. So it's extremely meritorious. And why that is important. So merit is essentially like good karma, if you want. Yeah, positive karma, which brings happiness. Okay. But merit also refers to just like our positive acts, I guess, related to the Dharma. I can't remember now, I'm sorry. But in order to achieve enlightenment, we need like a measureless mass of merit and wisdom. So creating merit is quite important. All right, now let's talk about the Bodhicitta vow for a moment. So as I said earlier, the wish to attain enlightenment Bodhicitta is the wish to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. Okay, so it means with consciousness. So not just people, but animals and beings in all the other realms. Okay. Yeah. And anything that comes with achieving enlightenment. anything we need to do in order to achieve enlightenment, it also is involved in the bodhicitta motivation, okay? So it's not just sitting around kind of going like, oh, I wish I could achieve enlightenment because beings, right? It's not like that. It's like, okay, what do I have to do in order to achieve enlightenment? All right. Typically, they boil what we have to do down to 3 things. All right. Study, or sometimes they call it hearing. So that's becoming acquainted with the teachings. Contemplation. So contemplation means means to, consider the teachings, like I was saying earlier, to test them, to examine them, to, think about them, notice them in our day-to-day life. All right. So let's say we receive the teaching that, everything is impermanent. Okay. We might think like, I'm not sure about that. I think there's probably some things that are permanent. Maybe space is permanent. Maybe, I don't know, maybe I can't think of anything right now, but let's say space, because it's probably one of the things people go to, but space is not permanent, as we know from science, right? Space is ever expanding. Things change all the time and so forth. So that's contemplating, right? I think I'm going to try to find something. I'm not sure this is true. And then we can notice it, just notice it. Oh, yeah, it's really hot today. Yesterday it was cool, Oh, I look in the mirror and I see a few more gray hairs, impermanence, okay? And then meditation. So meditation is what allows us or creates the environment for us to the teachings like part of who we are, rather than just keeping it in the intellect. It becomes an experience for us, a visceral experience. And that's why one of the reasons why meditation is so important. Okay, if we just study, especially in the Vajrayana, like there's so much to learn. There's a very rigorous and complicated philosophy. There's, all kinds of teachings. And honestly, without exaggeration, we could study our entire life and never get to the end of the teachings. Okay. So if we just keep it in our head, it's okay. It's better than not studying at all, but it's not going to really help us progress on the path. So that's why meditation, one of the reasons meditation is so important. So what does it mean and how is it done to take the Bodhisattva vow? So when we take the Bodhisattva vow, it's the vow to continue to return to cyclic existence until all beings have attained Buddhahood or enlightenment. Okay. Even after we've attained enlightenment or nearly attained enlightenment, we make this vow. I'm going to continue to come back until. All right. It's a serious vow. Our serious vows, and we should take it seriously. Okay. If we haven't taken these vows yet, and we feel like, yeah, Buddhism is my jam, Buddhism is the way I want to go. I want to follow this path. Then no problem. Take the vows, But if you feel like, I'm not sure, you can wait, you can wait until you feel more confident that this is what you want to do. There's no forcing, But if you do want to follow the path, you do need to take these 2 vows. In my case, for example, when I first started out, I took the Refuge vow, but I did not feel ready to take the Bodhisattva vow. I was like, I don't really want to continue to come back to cyclic existence over and over. Ew. So, but eventually, once I learned more about and the value of this path and the suffering of sentient beings and so forth, I took it with great joy. Okay, so how we take that vow is very similar, really exactly the same as what I said for Refuge. It's brief, we repeat some things and, the Lama explains it. We repeat some things as part of the ceremony, and then we receive the vow. So it's not a big deal. as far as the ritual or whatever is concerned, but that's how it's done. Okay, so I hope that was helpful to you. I mean, there's a lot more to say about both these things, but I'm limited by time, so it's kind of a fast version of it. Okay. All right, so let's do some meditation since it's so dang important. Okay. So, because I don't know who's here, I always have to give the instructions again. So I'm sorry if it's boring for you, if you already know, but I don't really have a choice. Do you like my cup? Get that polka dots. I love it. Okay. So if you happen to be sitting on the floor, then just cross your legs in whatever position is comfortable for you. It's really helpful to make sure that your seat is high enough, like your cushion is high enough. So your knees should be lower than your hips. And the reason for that is it's going to support your more. If it's too low, we have a tendency to slouch. Okay. If it's too high, we have a tendency to arch our back. And both of those things are going to be uncomfortable. Okay. If you're in a chair, just put your feet flat on the floor. Okay. And all the other instructions are the same. So your hand should be either palms down on your knees or your thighs, depending on your comfort level, or resting one on top of the other like that in your lap, or with your fingers on top of each other and your thumbs touching like you're holding a goose egg. That third one is really the most formal one and is called the meditation mudra. Okay. Then your arms are relaxed. Actually, so you're not holding them in, you're not holding them out, okay? And your shoulders should be back a little bit. So the easiest way to do that is just to roll them back one time or a few times if you prefer. And you'll see as soon as you do that, your whole chest kind of opens up. Whew, it's easier to breathe, okay? The most important thing is that your spine is straight because all your nerves and everything are running up and down your spine, okay? So straight, not like you're in the army, okay? Just straight. So that means the back of your neck is also going to be straight. So tuck in your chin a little bit to allow that. Mouth is closed but relaxed, tongue resting on the roof of the mouth, breathing through the nose, the eyes are open, okay? So looking down about halfway. So if you look straight ahead and then you just lower your eyes halfway, all right? There's a whole bunch of reasons for that, which I'm not going to go into right now, but if you can, do try that. Most people are used to, if they've meditated before in a different tradition, they're used to meditating with their eyes closed. But in this tradition, we meditate with them open. I guess I will go into it. And the reason for that is so that we don't fall asleep. All right, very practical. And so that we don't fall into this kind of half sleep, which sometimes people mistake for a meditative state, but really you're just between wake and sleep. So we don't really want that. And also another practical thing is just that, we're trying to develop awareness. We're trying to get used to being aware, the mind being aware in the present moment. So if we are always meditating with our eyes closed, then we can only be aware with our eyes closed. So, right? So it's going to be hard to be aware in day-to-day life. See what I mean? Okay, so just try that. If you're not comfortable, then, just do a little bit over time until you get comfortable. Okay, so that's the posture. Simple, okay? So we're bringing our awareness to the sensation of the breath coming in and out of the nose. So sort of the end of your nostrils, okay? So please do that just for a moment. Just bring your awareness to that sensation. Okay, so what we're doing with our mind, and this is mindfulness or breathing practice, is we are trying to keep consistent awareness of the breath And we are just letting the thoughts come and go without engaging in them. We're not trying to stop thinking, okay? We can't, especially at our level. All right, so thought will arise, dwell, disappear, it'll be replaced by another one, which arises, dwells, and disappears, etc. On and on, okay? What we're trying to do is not get distracted by that. It's not go chasing after those thoughts. Just let them come and go like clouds in the sky. When we get distracted, I know we will, just bring your mind back to the breath. That's it. Focus on the breath. Notice when you get distracted, bring the mind back. Focus on the breath. Get distracted, bring the mind back. Okay, that's it. It's simple, but it's not easy. Okay, so the Tibetan word for meditation is gom, and what gom means is to become familiar with. So in this practice, we're becoming familiar with the mind in a state of awareness versus the mind in a state of distraction. Okay? All right. So I am going to ring the gong to start and then also to finish. So we will do this meditation for approximately 15 minutes. Okay. All right. Here we go. Now you can, if you like, begin to count the breaths. So counting either every inhalation, exhalation, up to a total of 10. Okay. The counting helps us to realize more quickly when we've gotten distracted because we lose count, right? At some point, we're just like, wait, where was I? Then as soon as we realize that, bring your mind back to the breath. Okay, simple. So if you want to do that, please begin now. If you don't want to do that, perfectly fine. Okay.
The attitude with which you bring your mind back to the breath is really important. Please do so without judgment, without any aggression to yourself. This is the practice. If we had it down, we wouldn't need to practice, right? So also, your body should be as relaxed as possible while maintaining the posture. And do check your posture from time to time. And your mind should be as relaxed as possible while maintaining awareness of the breath. Okay? So please continue.
Okay, so now we are going to do the closing prayers. If you don't feel like joining us, doesn't matter, no problem. If you do not have them in front of you, there's a link for them in the description box below. So maybe open that. Okay, and I will open mine and I will explain as we go along. All right. So this first prayer to Parnar Shabari, she is an emanation of Tara. And our teacher asked us to say this prayer in an effort to counteract the pandemic. So this one we're just going to say in English, and then we'll say this mantra 3 times. Lady, Holy One, enlightened and compassionate, appear now as the leaf-clad goddess, healer of disease. Do not turn away, but in compassion take myself and all beings of this age of 5 generations. Perform your deeds of soothing, purging, and cauterizing all the pains of illness, plagues, and pestilence. Om Pishatsi Panashabari Savatsola Prashamanaye Soha. Om Pishatsi Panashabari Savatsola Prashamanaye Soha. Om Pishatsi Panashabari Savatsola Prashamanaye Soha. So the next 3 prayers on this page are long life prayers for the Dalai Lama and our 2 main teachers. These we're just going to say in Tibetan. Kanri wawe koe shinkam su pendande wa malu juene chenre si won jinsing yam su yi shape gaba tu tengu shik. Om swasti jigme rabjam seyo chinlap ki kense dukarun sin nudan chok sabsu mishi doje taten chin tendrame petrin leta shin sho. If you find it is too hard to follow along with the Tibetan, just read the English, it's fine. Om swasti selai gamsa chenlap tenjun leilan sen jak se gyurtru pama wang sangsum nadre gyabo taten neilap chanten de shenten tage sho. So this next one is for all the lamas. So this one we're just going to read in English. We pray for the good health of the lamas. We pray for their precious lives to be long. We pray for their activities to spread and increase. May we be blessed, never depart from them. So the next one is really like a dedication prayer where we dedicate the merit towards all beings. So instead of just keeping it for ourselves, so it kind of redirects it out. It's very important. So say this once in English, once in By this merit, may all attain omniscience, may defeat the enemy wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of cyclic existence, may I free all beings. Sonam di tamche sikpani, tone nye pedranam panche shing, ke gana chi balon yi, si pe tsole drowa sho. Next 3 we read just in English. May bodhicitta, precious and sublime, arise where it has not yet come to be, and where it has arisen, may it never fail, but grow and flourish ever more and more. As long as space endures, as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain and dispel the miseries of the world. Ever absorbed in the display of divine forms and primordial awareness, appearance, sound, and perception in the state of divinities, mantras, and dharmakaya, may I, inseparable from the practice of profound and secret great yoga, attain within the essence of mind the state of one taste. Now we're going to say the 100-syllable mantra, which is mantra of purification. It's essentially to kind of correct any mistakes we might have made in our practice. So I'll read it slowly so you can join me here. Om Vajra Sattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajra Sattva Tenopa Tishtadrito Me Bhava Sutokayo Me Bhava Supokayo Me Bhava Anurakto Me Bhava Sawasidi Me Prayatsa Sawakama Sutsame Chitam Shriyam Kuruhum Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sawatata Gata Vajrama Me Mutsa Padri Bhava Maha Samaya Sattva. All right, so thank you so much for joining me here today. Really appreciate you showing up. And just before we close out, I have a couple of announcements to make. We have 2 new classes coming up this week, so please check those out. The first one starts on Tuesday, and that is called Principles of Buddhist Psychology, where we are studying Trungpa Rinpoche's text, Glimpses of the Abhidharma. You can find all the information for that in our website, which is linked below. And the other one starts on Thursday, and it's called Exploring Tibetan Buddhism. And we're going to be reviewing the text, Words of My Perfect Teacher. This course takes a year to complete, and it is the first year of our 3-year program, where the first year is study and the second year is practicing a particular sadhana, and the third year we start the preliminary practices. Okay, in order to do the second and third year, you have to have done the first year. But if you just want to do the first year because you want to study more, you want to deepen your study, you want to learn about what is this Vajrayana Tibetan Buddhism scene, okay, you can join. There's no commitment. If you join that, you're not making a commitment to do all 3 years, is what I'm saying. Okay, so as I said, all the info is below. Please sign up for the newsletter if you haven't already, because that way you're going to be the first to know about anything that is happening. So we have classes, we have retreats, we have seminars, we have, Lama visits when we open up again, and also even teachings on Zoom from some Lamas. So, if you want to know, that's the place. Okay? All right. So thank you again. And I hope to see you in our classes and events in the future. Okay. Bye. Gonna end this. Oh, you're welcome, Eileen. Thanks for joining us. Me, whatever. Okay. Bye, everybody.